What's up guys, this is Casey bringing you a Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be making low poly rocks. We're probably just going to focus on one rock because doing 4 of them would be a bit much. And it's probably particularly going to be this rock here that you can see. It's kind of layered and it's got these nice cracks, and I think this is the most interesting and easy of the rocks to create. So that's what we're going to be doing. There's going to be a part 2 probably coming soon that's going to be talking about using these rocks as assets. So stick around for that. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open a new Blender file. Alright, now, very first thing that you have to do up here at the top of your screen, make sure that you are in Cycles Render. Not Blender Render, not Blender Game, Cycles Render. You're going to be very lost if that is not the case. Okay, so this is what our scene looks like right now, and we're going to keep most of this. We're actually going to delete this lamp. So if we right click on it and hit the X button, or the X key, and click delete. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump right into this. The main cube here is actually going to be what we use for our rock. Now the idea of making low poly objects is that you're looking for things with very few vertices, very few faces, tries, all of these numbers up here. It makes your scene easy to render, quick to render, and they're very easy to add into scenes as maybe background objects or side objects. Without really messing with your current project or work, or overloading your computer if you have a computer that is maybe old. So let's go ahead and get started. I am in my front view, which is 1 on the numpad, and 5 on the numpad changes you to orthographic view. This is my top left corner here, front ortho view. And I'm going to go ahead and click on my cube and tab into edit mode. If I hit the A key, it will deselect everything. That's what I want to do. And then I want to hit my Z key to go into my wireframe view mode. Now I need to hit the B key to box select, and then left click and drag over these top vertices. Now if we zoom around here, you can see that it selects the front and back vertices. That's because we're in wireframe mode. If we are not in wireframe mode, let me show you, it will only select the front vertices. That's not what we're looking for. So we need to go ahead and select all of these top vertices, and then we're going to grab them with the G key, constrain it to the Z axis with the Z key, and then move it straight down. And we're just looking for something sort of like this, like a box. I am going to move this up a little bit because it is sitting underneath my grid floor, and I hate when it's sitting underneath there. Makes things confusing. Let's move it right there. Okay. So this is what we've got, just this flat sort of box. What we need to do next is we actually need to loop cut this a few times. So over here in our toolbar, in the Tools tab, when we're in edit mode, you will see this these options for add, and there's loop, cut, and slide. That's what we need to click on. And if you mouse over the object, you'll see this pink line that tells you where it's going to cut your object. We want to cut it probably 3 times. So if we use our mouse wheel and scroll up, there's 3 cuts. So now we need to left click to select 3 cuts. And now you see that our loop cuts are movable. We can slide them left or right. We don't want them to slide. We want them square in the center. So in order to do that, we need to right click, and it will automatically center them and place them. Now we're just going to do that to the other side as well. So loop, cut, and slide, 3 cuts, left click, and right click. And that gives us a 4x4 grid to work with. You can maybe add a little bit more, but again, we're looking for low poly counts. So we want to make sure that we have as few details as possible when we're making these. Alright, so now that we have our bottom section here, we're just going to start modeling a little bit of a rock. So I'm going to go to my top view with 7 on my numpad. And I'm going to again hit the Z key for my wireframe view mode. And I'm going to use box select again with the B key. And I'm going to start by rounding out these corners like this. I'm just selecting them and grabbing them with the G key and moving them where I want them, like so. So we've got these rounded edges a little bit here. So the next thing I want to do is actually just kind of make it look weird, make it look a little more rock-ish instead of this very perfect sort of circular square thing. So I'm just going to start box selecting some of these vertices, and I just want to start moving them around. And there is no particular perfect way of doing this, so feel free to make it however you would like. This is your project, this is your rock. You can make it as jagged as you'd like, or you could make it very unjagged. You can make it very round if you would like. Rocks, when they're formed in nature, are very random. They can be smooth, they can be jagged, they can be messy, clean, they can be covered in moss. I mean, you know, rocks are rocks. They look and come in all different shapes and sizes. So this is what I've got right here. And that's pretty good for now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. And the next thing I want to do is actually create another layer for this. The easiest way to do that is to just select everything with the A key, and we're just going to duplicate this. So Shift D will duplicate the object. You see I've pulled a completely new object right out of it, and I'm going to constrain it to the Z axis with the Z key, and I want to move this up on top. I'm leaving a little bit of a gap here. You can see it's overlaying itself. That's fine. We're going to actually scale this. So if we hit the S key to scale, and we want to scale it in somewhere about here. And now I'm just going to kind of move this around a little bit. Maybe over in here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to actually rotate it. We don't want a complete duplicate copy. If you're looking straight at this, you can obviously tell that this is just two of the exact same layer, but we don't want that. We want it to look a little more random. So in order to do that, we're just going to hit the R key to rotate, and we're going to rotate it right like that. So now you're looking at it, and it looks quite a bit more random. And now that we've scaled it, we actually need to move it back down on that Z axis again. Right about like this. And now we're just going to do the same thing again. We're going to duplicate it, Shift D on the Z axis. We're going to scale it down again. And pull it down on the Z axis. And then we want to rotate it and move it. I'm kind of sticking all of these back in the corner. You don't necessarily have to. Again, these are rocks. You could pretty much do these any way that you'd like. As long as it looks good to you, then that is all that matters. Okay, so 3 layers is probably where I'm going to stay. However, I do want one last little piece up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here where there are these 3 little boxes. This is vertex select mode, edge select mode, and face select mode. And I want to do face selects. So I'm going to click that box and then click these 4 faces in the corner. And now I just want to pull these faces forward by extruding them, because I don't want it, if I grab it, you'll see it pulls everything. I don't quite want that, so I'm just going to extrude it on the Z-axis. And then I'm going to scale it with the S key. And maybe pull it down just a little bit here. Something like that. Okay, so we have the basis for our rock. You can see it is starting to look a little more rockish. The last thing that we need to do to this is we actually just need to kind of beat it up a little bit. Tab in edit mode here, go back to my vertices select. And the first thing I do when I'm beating up these types of rocks is I actually want to scale the top layer, or the top section of each layer, inwards a little bit to give it a little bit of a slope. So if I go to my front view and go to my wireframe mode, and then I'm just going to box select these top vertices here, like that, and then I want to scale it inwards, like this. And then we're going to do it for the next layer. Pull out just a little bit here. Box select these. And scale that one in. I'm losing my voice today, man. And do it to this one here. Scale that one in. Maybe a little bit extra on that one. Yeah, there we go. And then scale this top part one more time, because that got goofed up a little bit. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to do is I just want to start grabbing random vertices and just moving them around. Up, down, left, right, whatever makes it look more interesting, whatever makes it look more like a rock. So, I'm just going to pull that one in like that. Maybe this one here I'll pull up, give it a little bit more of a jagged edge here. Pull that one down. And then these ones here are kind of hanging over. You could leave them that way. It doesn't look particularly bad in my experience with this. However, I am going to just pull them in to hide them a little bit, because I think that there is something to be said about types of rocks where they kind of hang all over the place, they hang over each other. I want this to look more or less like one continuous rock, instead of a bunch of rocks kind of stacked on top of each other. So I'm just kind of pulling these vertices in to hide them a little bit. And like that. Okay. Now we'll do that again on the second layer. Pull some of these down. Maybe this one slopes quite a bit. Pull these two up. That. Okay. This one I'm actually going to pull in. Yeah. Okay. This one here I'll pull down. Pull this one down. And then we'll come up here, we'll pull this. No. We've got too many going sloping down here. So we'll slope that one up. This one down. That one down. Too much. Something like that. Pull that one down. Pull this one up. That one up. Then I want to pull this one down and this one down. Slope that one in a little bit. Okay, this is a little too much here, so we'll pull that back down. Like that. Pull this in, give it a little slope on the interior. Same with this. Pull these ones in. And now we need to pull these down. Like that. Okay. So now it looks a lot more random, which is exactly what we're going for. Now I usually just keep mine in this flat shaded kind of view. Once you get the textures on, it's not a huge issue. It doesn't really show all of these grid lines, anything like that. However, if it does bother you, or if you would like your rock to be a little bit smoother, you could go over here to your tool options. Make sure you're out of edit mode, and you're going to select smooth shading. And it's gonna make it look a little less detailed, and that's okay. You could leave your rock looking like this, make it a little bit smoother, or you could even go to your modifier tab, add a new modifier, and add an edge split modifier. And now we've got most of our tops and sides are kind of smoothed out, but our edges stay nice and crisp. So it's kind of the best of both worlds using that edge split. However, if you're trying to make an asset for other projects, I usually try and leave modifiers off if possible, just because it can be a little messy. Okay, so we basically have our rock here. So the next thing that we need to do is actually start on the material for the rock. We're going to start by unwrapping this object first. So if we tab into edit mode, that we have a couple of options. Actually, before I start, let's tab back out of edit mode, and let's control A. That's going to let us apply our rotation and scale. That's going to be important when we actually unwrap. Okay, so now back in edit mode, there's a couple of options for how you can unwrap this. If you select everything with the A key and hit U, you'll see that brings up UV mapping, and this is how we unwrap our object. Now there's quite a few different options to choose from. You could project from view, however that doesn't give fantastic results. Smart UV project is one that sometimes you can really get away with, but for rocks it can show a lot of seams. When we add an actual image to this, it's going to kind of butt the image up against each other in different places, and wherever it tried to unwrap your object, you're going to see that the picture of the images just don't line up, and it looks very unnatural. So we're going to actually make our seams ourselves. In order to do that, we basically need to cut every one of these layers of rocks from the top, bottom, and then one side. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. On this very bottom layer, if I hold the Alt key and right click on an edge, you'll see that it selects most of the edge. Now, because we've messed with some of the vertices, it doesn't go all the way around the edge like it should. But if we hold Shift Alt and click the rest of these edges, you'll see it selects the entire outer ring of that bottom part. And that's what we want. We want our seams to be as hidden as possible. So we're going to start at the bottom, and this is going to be the front side of our rock. So for the side seam on this, we need to go to the back. So this is considered the back. And I'm just going to select this one edge here by holding Shift and right clicking it again. And now we need to actually separate it from the top. So hold Alt, Shift, and again select all the way. Oops, hold on. Before you do that, go to Edge Select Mode down here. There we go. Now Alt, Shift, and select all around the top of it here. So now that we have where we want our seams on this bottom layer, we can go to Mesh, Edges, and Mark Seam. And that'll place this red line. If I zoom in here, you can see it. There's this red line where we placed our seams. That means Blender's basically going to cut the object right at this red line to separate the UV maps. And that's going to give us a much cleaner unwrap. It's not going to be all stretched and skewed and weird looking. It's going to be a very normal unwrap. However, again, like I said, every place that you have these red lines, it is cutting the object. Your image that you use is not necessarily going to line up perfectly, which is okay for the top and the sides. It's also okay that we hid the seam in the back here, so nobody's going to see that one. We're gonna start on this second layer now, so let's go ahead and, I guess this one's easier to start with the top, so I'll just hold Alt and Shift and start clicking on these. Select all of those, and again we want our seam at the back. Now the bottom is a little tricky. We're gonna have to go into our wireframe mode by hitting Z, and we just kind of have to grab these bottom edges through the rest of our object. There we go. And I'm not even gonna mark the seams yet. I'm just gonna move right up to the next one and keep going. So if I Alt Shift and click around here and grab these ones, oops, and we'll pop our seam right there in the back. And we need to wireframe mode. Grab these ones. And we got one more right there. And then we need to do this very, very tip top here. So start there, I guess. And we'll go Shift, Alt, select those. Okay, so now we can go down here to Mesh, Edges, and Mark Seam. Okay, so now if we tab out of edit mode, and not tab out of edit mode, select everything in edit mode, and we need to unwrap. So if we go to our image editor now, and I don't have any images open, let's see, let's go to my cliff images, and I tend to like this one. We'll probably use this one. Okay, back to my 3D view, tab in edit mode, go back to UV image editor, there we go. So you can see the unwrap that we have. These are our sides, and these are the tops and bottoms, and everything looks pretty clean. Now we can clean this up even more if we would like to by clicking on UVs, and we can average island scale. That'll scale it out just a little bit more even. And we can also go to UVs and do minimize stretch. When you click on this, it's going to let you move your mouse cursor. Down here in the corner, which you can't hardly see, it says minimize stretch, blend 0.00. If we use our scroll wheel, it'll begin to minimize the stretch. Now sometimes you don't want to do this, sometimes you can get away with it. This one it's not changing much, so we might as well put it all the way up to 1, and then we'll just left click. Now if you're very meticulous and you want perfect rocky textures, you could come in here and select vertice by vertice and like straighten them out, but I don't think it really needs it. So we're just gonna go, we're gonna go right back to our 3D view, and now we just need to add our material. So let's go to our material tab, and there's a material already added, so we're just going to click use nodes. And now we're going to go to our compositor. So up here where it says default, click on compositing. And here's our little node box to select. And you see that it starts us with a diffuse shader and the material output. So we need to add a texture, image texture. And we're just going to pop that, connect it right into the diffuse shader. And I'm going to open the same image that I've already opened. That's rocks arid 0033 right here. Now these rock textures, I've got a web page open here, come from textures.com, formerly cgtextures.com. But here you can get hundreds of thousands of free textures for all of the projects that you want. When you come to this site, you will need to create a username and password. However, it is free to do so. Get out of there. It is free to do so, so you might as well, especially if you're working in Blender. But we can search by, like, let's see, let's search for a cliff. My caps lock is on. So if I type in cliff, you see it's got 1,169 textures, and you can just pop through here. It's got weird advertisements here. But yeah, you can just look through here and find your favorite rock texture. Not particularly seeing the one that I use in my tutorial. Maybe I did not use cliff, maybe I used rock. Let's try that. Aha, here it is. So we searched for rock, and this is the texture that I'm using right here. Once you're logged in, you may download the small size of it. The larger sizes you have to subscribe in order to get, which I will be using the large one because I think it gives a much better result. The larger your texture file is, the more detail and more closer your camera can get to the object without it making it look horrible. If you've ever played a video game before, usually the difference between ultra high graphics settings and low graphics settings is that they're changing these image sizes. Yeah, it will take longer to render, but it will look considerably better with larger images. However, for the sake of this tutorial, the small one will work. So once you have your rock texture, and you don't necessarily have to use the one that I'm using, the same technique can be applied to any rock texture. We're going to, let me change this real quick. Alright, so let me add some lighting real quick so you guys can see what we're doing. Just gonna do a quick HDR. Like that. Do 5, I think will be okay. And if I go to my render view, you should be able to see now what we're looking like. Oops, let me go transparent, like that. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Right off the bat, you can see that the image is way too big for our little rock here. So in order to straighten that out, we're going to add a input node texture coordinate, and then we need to add a vector mapping node. Now since we're using UVs and it's not generating its own unwrap, we're going to pull the UV input from our texture coordinate and plug it into the vector section of our mapping node, and then we will pull the mapping node into the vector of our image texture. Now anytime you use this mapping node, you have to tell it where to get its texture coordinates. So if you're not using this, you see it turns brown. It will also turn brown if you did not unwrap your object properly. So make sure that you have unwrapped it, make sure that you've got your texture coordinate hooked up to the UVs, and now we can mess with the scale. So let's try 2. 2 is still a bit large, so let's try 3. Aha! 3 is considerably better. Now we're starting to look like a decent rock. Okay, so now that we have our image texture set up and it is about the right size, the next thing we want to do is actually add a little bit of gloss. So let's add in a shader, glossy shader, and add in a shader mix shader, and just plug both the diffuse and the glossy shader in. And you can see down here immediately it has turned very shiny and it has washed everything out. But we're going to fix that by changing the roughness value to a 0.3. Gives it slightly less of a really shiny kind of appearance. It gives it a more of a beat up kind of look, which is what we're looking for. Now with this factor value, you could change it to something very low, like a 0.1, and that gives it just a little bit of a gloss effect. However, you could also add in a fresnel node, that's an input fresnel, and plug that into the factor. So now, depending on the angle that you're looking at your rock, you will get some parts that are glossy and some parts that are not. You can play around with that fresnel node. Usually the IOR value you can actually set based on, there's a big chart online that has all the IOR values for different objects like rocks and crystals and things like that. You can actually find out this number, realistic number. I'm just going to leave it set to 1.45. It's not going to make a huge difference in the end for me. But the last thing that we need to do to make this glossy shader even better is to add a bump node. So let's add in a vector bump, and let's plug the color of our image texture into the height on our bump node. And now we'll just plug the bump node into the normal of our glossy shader. Now if I zoom way in on this, you should be able to see that it is starting to look a little bumpy, and that's exactly what we want. So the last thing that we're going to do is actually add a bit of displacement with our node editor. And this is one of my personal favorite things to do. It can really make or break a good texture to have a decent looking displacement. So we're going to add in a converter color ramp, and we want to plug our image texture into the color ramp. Now I'm going to click on my diffuse shader and duplicate it. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to test what my image is going to look like. So if I plug in my color ramp to that new diffuse shader, and then plug the diffuse shader into my material output, it will replace all of what I just did with now just the color ramp and the image texture. And you can see it has changed it to black and white, which is what we want. So in this color ramp, we're now going to change the type from linear to constant. And that's going to make it all black to start with. However, on the right side, this slider here is white. So the more we move this white, the more it's going to give us white in our image. And the closer we get to our black slider, the less there will be any detail in the black. It's a little confusing, but if you're watching my image down here, you can see it looks really dirty, and now the lines are starting to look a little more clean, and a little more clean, and a little more clean, until eventually I get close enough and the black lines disappear. We're looking for something probably right in here. We want it a little dirty, but not too much. You can absolutely go overboard with this, and it will look terrible. So, once you have it looking something pretty similar to this, I think we are okay to delete this diffuse shader. Make sure we plug our mix shader back into the material output. Now we need to add a converter math node and change that to multiply, and then we're going to plug the color ramp into one of the values and plug the multiply node into the displacement of our material output. And just like that, we have completed our material for our rock. So let's go back to our default view, and let's see, let's go ahead and give this a let's go with 50. No, that's not what I wanted. I wanted 50 in my preview. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on rendered, and we're at 50. Yay! So look at this. This is the rock that we have created. We have a decent bit of shininess going on the top because of our camera angle. We have decent bumps. Our cracks are looking like actual cracks, and the rock looks pretty good. So imagine putting this somewhere in the background of a scene, or maybe even putting it right into the foreground of the scene, something like this. So this is how you create a rock. Again, you can make many different types of rocks, any different way that you want. The materials will pretty much be the same. You can always tweak them a little bit here and there. Go back to my solid view here. Basically, once you have created a rock, I'm just going to go ahead and do the asset part now. I guess I've got time. So what you want to do is you want to create a brand new Blender file just for rocks. And I don't have mine set up yet. It's not completed, but we're just going to do this real quick. So if I Shift D and duplicate this rock, and I'm going to do it 4 different times, like that. And let's say that these are 4 very different rocks. What you want to do is you want to click on one of them. Over here in the tabs, there's this little yellow cube. If we click on it, it will let us name our cube. So let's name this, let's see, let's name them colors, I guess, like black rock. And then I'll click on my next one and name that one yellow rock. And then I'll go red rock. And then I'll go green rock. Something like that. And let's see, yellow and black are the ones I'm using. So if I make a new material, you guys don't have to follow along with this. I'm just going to do this for visual purposes. And let's go ahead and go to my compositor. And I'm going to go ahead and, put this back on solid view mode. And just going to add a quick color, hue, saturation. And let's give it a different color. Change that saturation, change the value. Okay, so we have 2 very different colored rocks is what we have now. We have our one that we named black rock and the one that we named yellow rock. So what you would need to do is actually save this file, which I'm going to do right now. I'm going to name this rock assets. So now that we've saved this Blender file, we can actually use these rocks in other projects. So if I file and go to new project like this, and let's say I'm working on a project and I decide, you know what would look good over here in this corner? I need a rock, but it takes a little bit of time to create a rock. So to save time, I can just append it from my other file. So if I go to File, Append, and go to, let's see, Blend Files, and let's find rocks, rock assets. Now once I click on this, you'll see there's a bunch of folders. We're looking for object, and here we have our black rock, green rock, red rock, and yellow rock. Let's put in our yellow rock. And just like that, our rock is right there in our scene, ready to go. We can now scale it if we would like. If it's too big, we can rotate it. If we needed a different direction, we can change its material. The material came with it. So if we wanted to go in here and change it from the compositor, which is definitely something you need to do when you're working on different projects, usually just tweaking the coloration or maybe even tweaking the bump, anything like that. You can pop it in there. Go back to my GPU render here. You can see this is the one that I changed. So if I go to my rendered view mode, you see it's a very dark green color rock. And it still has all of our bump maps, our image, and everything is included with it. So the idea behind creating an asset project is just making future projects easier for yourself. You want to create one with everyday objects that you use all the time. So if you're making a lot of nature scenes, you might make a rock asset file. If you're making something with a lot of trees, you might create trees. You might do grass, or you might do chairs. If you're doing like interior design, you might just put all of your chairs from every blend file you've ever done into one project file and just name it assets so that you can just easily get to them and append them. I even have a material library where if I go to File, Append, Blend Files, Material Library. Now in this one, instead of using objects, I'm using the material folder. And you see I've just collected a lot of materials that I've made over the years. Let's see, let's go with something like, let's go with where's sand? I like sand. Where is that? There it is. So if I click on sand and click on my cube, I can now go to my material tab and I can just select Sand Pro. And now when I go to my rendered view, I now have sand. So it can be extremely easy to make projects. The less technical work involved, the better. If you're just sitting around and you have come up with a great project idea, you have this vision in your head, it's so much easier to just get in here, start adding files that you know are going to work, that you may just have to tweak a little bit to work in the project, and then create your vision instead of having to start from scratch every single time you work in Blender. I mean, if you start from this default cube every single time and you're making 17 different rocks and putting them into your scene, and you're doing that every single time, it just takes up a lot of time, a lot of effort, when it should be about the vision, the final project. It should be about the finished product. So that's what making asset files is all about. Just find anything that you can make in Blender that you can create a large collection of. Work on it slowly in your spare time, you know, in between projects, or create them new for your projects. That's another thing I can show you. If we go ahead and open our, well, actually, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so if I open my rock asset file, and I have my 4 rocks here, let's say I have made another project somewhere, and I like the rock that I made for that project. What I can do now is open up this rock asset file, and I can file, append, and let's go to blend files. Let's see, I have another rock one in here, rocks, and objects. Where did all my stuff go? I must have created it from a plane? That can't be right. Where did I put that stuff? Let's see, that one, we've got our mesh, it's fine. It's our objects. Let's try our plane. Nope, that's not it. Let's go to file, append. I did not name this, I didn't name anything in my rocks. That's why it is incomplete at the moment. Why the heck is there a sphere in that one? Alright. Let's see. Let's just append something else then, because I don't know where all my stuff went. Object, scene, texture, world. I don't know. I don't know where my stuff went, but let's append something else. What has something good in it? What has something good in it? Kitchen, beach. Boy, I don't have anything set up for this. Let's go with well, I don't even know what this one's gonna be, but let's, holy moly, let's not do that one. Oh, sorry about this, guys. I did not realize that I had nothing set up for this. See, I must have started with the plane. There we go. Okay, so I've appended this seahorse from another file. Obviously, it's not a rock. I wouldn't really want this to be with my rock assets. However, it's the only thing I could find. So, I have now taken an object from another blend file that I've created and put it into my rock assets. So, just like that, you can take, I mean, if you're working on another project and you make another rock and you're like, wow, that rock was really cool, I like that one, I need to add that to my rock assets. Just come into your rock asset file, file, append, pop it in, and then you're just going to save it. So when we save it, pop in. You may also, again, you may want to rename it. So if I name this seahorse, and then we save this, and then we can go to our new file, whoops, file new, and now if we file append, go to our blend files and rock assets, object, and now you can see there's our seahorse. Just like that, we've put something we liked from another project into our new project. It's just a fancy way of basically organizing everything that you create. Like I said, it can make projects a million times easier if all you're doing is just kind of clicking and placing things instead of remaking the wheel every time that you have to make a new project. Obviously, this doesn't work for everything. Your scenes shouldn't always just be copied and pasted from other scenes that you are doing, or from anybody else's scenes for that matter. But it can absolutely save you some time, effort, and energy. So, last little thing that we will end on. What am I looking for? My UV, nope, yep, that's what I wanted. We'll open textures, not textures, complete PNGs, and where is rocks? Ta-da! So, this is just a picture I set up from a asset file I'm working on now for rocks. You can see how interesting they can all look together. However, you can tweak every single one of these. The colors can be different, the shapes can be different. I have little rocks, I have big rocks. Some of them have less geometry, some of them have more. It's really up to you, however you want to create them. Again, I've made them all low poly so that I can easily place them into scenes without creating too much of a stress on my computer or on my render. But that's pretty much it. Now you guys know how to make a basic rock, low poly, and how to set up and use assets for Blender. I call them assets. You could probably call them a library if you wanted to call it a library. I know assets are usually used for games. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching.